So, guys, welcome to the next portion of our summit. Just like yesterday, we are going to follow up with the panel next, and the three of us will discuss onboarding and specifically, looking at alignment and assimilation, which is what the outcome of onboarding should be. And after that, V will dive into the presentation of, the onboarding presentations, and then we'll close it out just like we did yesterday. And then we'll do that by what is that, 2 o'clock Eastern and noon Mountain and 8 p.m. Eastern European, and I can't do Indian time. All right, guys. So the question to you guys right away, right out the gate, let's create some clarity into even the title of this panel. What is alignment when you're trying to create alignment with onboarding, and what is assimilation when you're trying to create onboarding assimilation? What are those two different concepts, and why are they important?
So if I can start, I would say alignment for me is when a leader ensures that his team members, whether they are existing or especially new team members, are aligned with the vision of the company or the team or the organization. So ensuring that they all have the same goals, the same vision, the same values, so that again, after, people can work as a team together and make sure that they use each other's strengths and really make the best team possible. And assimilation for me is again ensuring that whatever knowledge is being given to especially new team members, new hires, is that they have time to absorb the knowledge. It's one thing to provide lots and lots of knowledge, but if people do not have the time to absorb it, to practice it, to realize what does it mean actually, you said this, or the one of our value is that, but what does that really mean? So for me, alignment and assimilations are key, and where you start to bring that to your organization is as soon as you have your people on board. I would say already as a start, and that's one thing we discussed yesterday with the hiring, you already need to identify if your people are the right fit for your organization, if your values are aligned with those of that candidate. But once you have verified that, and once they are starting with you, starting day one, this is when the leader's job is to ensure that people are aligned throughout these teams and throughout these organizations. What do you think, Kevin?
I think alignment, again, I'm kind of simple, but alignment starts with vision. Do we have alignment around our vision? And then if we've got the alignment with the vision, then the assimilation is how, as an individual, what is my part? How do I fit in being a part of that vision? So keeping it just very high level, I agree with what you said, V, that it's all a part of becoming a part of the organization, the team, and making sure that we are a fit. So very much so.
No, I love it, guys. To me, it's one is right. Alignment is that I did the job of sending the information out there that everybody has at their disposal. They know how to do the job, and it's been there. But assimilation is that information connected, it was received, understood, and is able to be applied in a way that it was intended. And there's so many things that go into that, and that's what we're going to ultimately cover in onboarding today, because oftentimes I see leaders, when we see the word check the box a lot, check the box that the information was sent out. I did the training. I covered the topics. My T's are crossed. My I's are dotted, and it's all good to go. No, it's not, because there's the component of receiving information, right? And we talk a lot about learning design and how to teach people. And I talk a lot about taxonomies of learning and stuff like that, and how it's not enough just to understand something. That's the very beginning of learning. That's just being able to regurgitate information. You told me something and I basically remembered what it meant. But then being able to take that same information, apply it in a different situation that may not be the same, takes a whole other skill set. But then to take new information and that's irrelevant, apply it in a non-relevant way, and completely synthesize a new plan is ultimately what we want from alignment. We want people to be so aligned to what we do that if I'm not there as a leader, my downline can make decisions without me, freely is empowered to do so, but also has enough depth of knowledge to execute things that way. Right. So that's kind of the difference for me. So the next question that I have for you guys, how do you effectively, actually, you know what, before that question, let me ask you, what is the best time frame to onboard new hires? Let's start with kind of some concrete numbers. What do you guys think? Should it be like a week, month, 3 months? What is a good amount of time to onboard new hires?
Wow. I would say as immediately as possible. And part of the rationale there goes into learning principles. And funny that you mentioned that, Anton, is like you read out of some of my notes on learning, how learning occurs, something I shared. And but yeah, part of effective learning processes is immediacy. And so the sooner that we can capitalize and get people plugged in and moving and doing what we want them to do, what we've hired them to do. And by the way, usually the reason they're looking for this job is they want to start earning as quickly as possible. So just very
I'm
pragmatic.
saying more like not when it starts, but more how long does it go? Like how long are you on board for?
Go ahead, V.
So for me, I would say overall, I would see onboarding in two phases. The one is really more the training, ensuring that the people get the basic knowledge about the jobs, the organization, the tools they need to use, etc. And then, as you said, Kevin, the practice, that they need to practice what they've been taught, whether it's again using a certain tool, knowing exactly who is who, etc. So to answer your question, Anton, I think this period between the training time and let's call it the practice time, the overall onboarding, to me should last at least 3 months, because it's, as far as I know from my experience, it's only after approximately 90 days that a person starts to understand, okay, what is his or her role, what he or she needs to do, what are the responsibilities that he or she needs to take care of, and really start to understand who is who in the organization. So I think the 3 months period is a minimum, so that again the person has the good basis to move forward and again to grow and thrive in his job, his or her job.
Yeah, I would agree with V that 90 days is likely minimum, but I'll also add my non-formula answer. It needs to last as long as each individual needs it, and not until there is a clear handoff to the team leader or whoever they're working with, that they're confident that they can then move into that team and that situation in such a way that it doesn't leave them hanging or insecure.
And this is where I get to argue with Kevin for a change. Usually I agree with everything he says.
Uh-oh.
And I will push back and I say not as long as they need it, because at some point we have to understand that a manager has limited resources and they can only be taken in so many levels. If an employee hasn't picked something up and you've invested enough amount of time on onboarding, there is such thing as bad hires. I don't want to say that
Of course.
there's never a bad hire, and that sometimes you may realize as the onboarding is going on, that's just not picking it up. Don't play this out. Sit down,
No.
have a conversation, either move them into a different role or potentially move them out of the organization and help them find another job somewhere, because it's not a good fit for them first and foremost, right? But to me, I like your guys' answers, and I like the caveat you threw out there. As a consultant, I'm going to say 90 days because that's a typical thing that we're used to, in corporations and stuff like that. But as a coach, I'm going to say it depends on how much do they get to do all the tasks that are necessary for them to do within that time, right? Is it a job that's maybe seasonal, right? And you need to think about that as a leader. What if they don't get, I hired him in the summer, but the thing they do sometimes in the winter doesn't actually start until the winter. There's certain things that we do in organizations like that. So you may need to think about, I'm going to have to almost like onboard them again. Maybe I'll let go of the reins for a while. And when they know the next thing is coming back in, I do phase two, right? So it just depends on how many times have they had the chance to execute their tasks on their own and practice the things that they've been taught.
So that's a great point you're making, and I'd like to take an example. So when I was working in Amazon, we were hiring lots of people to help the customers, especially through have busy periods such as Prime Day, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and Christmas. And as you rightly said, Anton, we could not afford to have some people for 3 months just practicing before we were getting to these busiest periods. So as the leader, and to Kevin's point earlier, the leader needs to have the vision of what he or she wants to achieve, and then for what. And then by having these people, these new hires deal with certain things, then the leader knows, okay, for the complicated cases, I will not have these new hires work on these complicated issues. I will only have them pick up contacts for the easy questions or the most frequently asked questions. So it's a connection between what the leader has in mind, what the situation is, and what people need to do. So great point. Yes.
And awareness, it requires a high level of awareness from a leader
Mm-hmm.
and a level of care that goes, you know what? I don't want my people walking around like they don't know what they're doing. Not just because it's ineffective for the job. Yes, that's obvious, but because they feel ineffective, because they're walking around feeling unconfident, feeling like they can't take initiative. And that's a horrible way to be as a human being. Nobody wants to walk around feeling like they don't know what they're doing.
I think the key message here, or a key message, not necessarily the key message, is that we don't let people get lost. Okay, so often in current processes, you reach a time, you reach a certain number of training hours, you reach something, and they're assumed to be there. And then if you're also in an organization where your HR department is doing your onboarding and then they're handed off to the team, making sure that the person doesn't get lost in the handoff. And it's so communication about this and about that individual becomes so critical to keep the process moving forward and not losing people along the way, and forgetting that yes, that they are human and they may not have gotten what they need to get at this point and may need to pick it up and go again, or as you mentioned, Anton, maybe to realize this is not working and either shift a different direction or to help them find alternative options.
Stringing people along when they shouldn't be there is an unsustainable practice. And I want to make sure that people understand sustainability doesn't always mean just being nice. Sustainability means being effective, right? And that oftentimes I think when we mention the word human first, human sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
think that you're just a pushover, you're super soft. No, that's not the case. You just assess things from a standpoint that people come first. But sometimes you have to make tough decisions, and that includes putting people first and making tough decisions for them. But I like how you mentioned transitions, right? And that leads me to my next question. So,
Sorry, Anton,
yeah, go
just
ahead.
before, sorry to interrupt, Shatat made a comment. He said, I think the time frame should be changeable because different types of needs require different time. That's a great point, Shatat.
Not being
Thank you.
rigid. It's such a great point, Shata, is that
Mm-hmm.
we can't be rigid. We can't, this idea of having an onboarding playbook, from the 70s or, whenever you had this binder that everybody went through this binder the same way, same everything. It's no longer effective. You might as well not do it. If you're going to do it that way, you might as well just spend some one-on-one time with these people and it'd probably be better off because it has to be so custom tailored. But Kev, you bring up a good point of transitioning, right? So you did a great job covering, we recruited this person. They said yes on the job, on the job interview, they signed their offer letter. How do we go from that signature being on a piece of paper to now we're going to bring them in and onboard them? How do we make that transition from recruiting into onboarding to make it as seamless and humanly sustainable as possible? And that's for both of you guys.
Team within a team. Okay, and I know that's a strange sounding answer, but what people need to realize, okay, if I'm the leader of the team getting this person, and then I need to be working with the leader of the HR team or onboarding team, and we need to work together as a team to make sure that these kinds of things happen. And so as we approach teams within teams, then we are able to better communicate. That's the value of those teams within a team, so that we're in a regular communication. Okay, did Susie get, she's completed her onboarding process official? Is she ready to transition and all that? And we're communicating. And the team leader might say, no, that she needs a little more of this or that, or the onboarding leader may say, no, she needs a little more time, or it may work the other way. Hey, Susie is just really getting this and she's passionate. We don't need to hold her back by making her wait this period of time. We need to get her in there and let her really jump on and move forward.
Yeah, I agree with the team, and Jeremy says that's where an onboarding comes into play exactly. And to me, one of my favorite topic is communication, constant communication between the newly hired person and the organization. And exactly that's where the team comes to play. You need to, the new hire needs to have constant communication with HR to make sure that the contract is signed, that all the necessary papers are filled in, whether it's for social security and employment, etc. With the hiring manager, maybe the hiring manager needs to know if the person has certain needs or certain requirements. Maybe, again, I don't know if you guys have that in the US, but in Europe, there is more and more focus on whether people need a special chair or they need a screen with that is higher, etc. So the hiring manager can take care of that before the employee, the new hire, comes on board. If you're an expatriate and you are supposed to move countries, then again, you may be, if your company is offering that, you may be put in contact with a relocation agency who will help you start looking for maybe houses or apartments where you can go and live, or maybe gave you some tips on the schools where your children can go to if you're moving with your family, etc. So it is really a team, and that's why I say communication is very important, not only from the company side, who needs to ask the new hire or guide the new hire in all the formalities that needs to be done, but also the new hire also can say, well, for instance, again, with the relocation agency, I can only start looking at apartments from that date, because before that I need to travel or I need to do certain things, etc. So it's really communicating, setting the right expectations from both sides, so that then again on day one, the new hire can really start being fully focused on his new jobs and his new responsibilities.
No, great points, guys. It's
I would offer that one thing to be careful here is making sure that as this process goes through, if there are multiple people involved, that we are have one person that is the leader for this person, so that we learn in emergency medical response that if you're going to help somebody in an emergency situation, if you just yell out, call 911, everybody goes, oh, well, they got it. No, they got it. Yeah, they got it. So the key is you point at somebody, make eye contact, and say, you call 911. Same concept here. If there are multiple people, get one person that is the leader in this effort.
I would challenge that the person's leader needs to be that person, and whenever feasible, I know that sometimes it may not be feasible, but I would say I'd be hard pressed to see many other priorities that a leader has to take care of than onboarding their new hires. V will cover this in great detail, this presentation on how important onboarding is and why that is the case. But I think it definitely should be the leader. But what I'm hearing a lot from you guys, and what makes me think of, is onboarding starts well before the person steps foot into your building, right? That there's usually a gap between an offer letter and that opportunity when they finally come in, whether they're moving countries, whether they're transferring jobs and they got to give their 2 weeks notice, all those things are relevant. But if you're waiting until they walk into the building to start onboarding them, you've missed some of the most important moments of low effort, high return. That those 2 weeks or whatever, that initial beginning before they step foot into your building, whether you, like V said, and you help them out with looking for an apartment building, or you did something different for them, you just engage them, right? You engage them because here's kind of, you guys know me, I'm an analogy person. So think about it this way. Depends on how big of a piece you're plugging into the system. And what I mean by that is this new hire a frontliner where they maybe don't have a lot of responsibilities, they can kind of come in and pick it up right away. Okay, that's not a big piece. But are you putting in maybe a manager or somebody that's highly technical, that is very specialized? So I want you to imagine like a locomotive. Locomotives are powerful, they're big, but they take a lot to get started. It takes a lot of power to start turning those tires, those wheels, and get it moving. Do you want those wheels to start turning when they start, or do you want those wheels to start turning while they're still getting ready to start? I don't know about you, but if I got to get a big locomotive going fast, I want it to start as early as possible. So I'm reaching out to them, I'm engaging them, I'm asking them questions, whatever it may be, and I'm just getting their brain to think about where they're at. But I'm also showing them that I care. They're already part of my team. I'm leaning on them. I'm trusting them. All those kind of things. And those initial 2 weeks can create that initial drive that as soon as they're there, they're moving instead of just trying to turn that engine.
Well, and
And
I would even go so far as to suggest that um, even if you got somebody that you picked and they're excited, communicate with them some opportunities to get ready to start even on their own, because then they can, it gives them a chance to actually jump in and own part of what's going on and engage them early on. And so,
yeah, I was about to say the same thing, Kevin. It's a great way as well if when people have an urgent deadline, and for instance, again, taking my example with Amazon, you want to have people as ready as quickly as possible. This is a chance to tell them, hey, have a look at our website, look at our values, look at the products that we're selling, look at the different sellers, etc., so that they start to be acquainted with what they're going to do. And that's a way to shorten onboarding or to make it as efficient as possible when you, as you said, Kevin, exactly, to involve them before. And that is how as well their motivation will be increased, because they will say, oh my God, I haven't even started yet and they're already involving me. So that's a great way. Yes, absolutely.
And I think this answer to this next question is going to be individual, but I'm curious what you guys think. It actually wasn't a question that we had on the panel pre-discussed, but I just want to ask you this because it's making me think about it. What do you think is the toughest part for the new hire coming in into the new job? If we all haven't been there in a long time, probably because we've all been managers or whatever, but think about a frontliner coming in into a new job. What is the hardest part of it all for them, in your opinion?
So for me, and I will take my example, and I'm thinking of all the introvert people out there. I think the scariest thing is when you're new and you're coming into a building and everybody's looking at you thinking, oh, that's the new person. And you're just there like, oh my God, I don't know them. And who are they? Are they my peers? Are they managers? And you are scared because again, this is a complete new environment you have to discover. You have to not only do a job, but you have to get to know the organization, your team, your colleagues, etc. So to me, this is the scariest part for people, and especially the introverts, is really that first day where they will walk in, they don't know anybody, and everybody's going to look at them and thinking, okay, who are they and what are they going to do?
yeah, this is the place where understanding group dynamic is so critical for the leader, because if, as I train people on group dynamic, one of the first things people are doing is sizing each other up, trying to figure out how they fit, okay, who they fit with, will they fit, and so on. And so as a leader, the more that we can really focus in on supporting that the new person during that time, to begin to help them know that they have a place, and including helping them to get to know the rest of the people as quickly as possible. because otherwise they're left to their own imagination as to what these people think, how they're going to react. Whereas if you take the time, and it's a good investment with a new person coming on board, help them to get to know the rest of the team quickly so that they're not focused on, uh-oh, what is this person going to say or whatever. Get them secure, the word secure, get them as secure as possible in that setting, and you will help them assimilate much more quickly and much more effectively, and have a better chance that they can fit in and become productive quickly.
I didn't want to assume that we're going to end up with the same answer, but I was kind of predicting that. And the reality is that where people spend is that where managers create most of their focus on, is the piece that the employees most worry about? And the answer is no, because what normally happens, yes, those parts are done, but that's the true check in the box thing that as I've ever seen. I introduced you to the team. We did a 5-minute hot seat. You talked about the same 5 questions, and now you're assimilated to our culture. You're accepted. You're ready to go. Boom, go learn technical stuff, right? No, but now let's join these 2 points together we just talked about with those pre-onboarding things and what should happen immediately where we're being onboarded. If you've done pre-onboarding well, some of that technical stuff should be out of the way. Get them comfortable with some basics. So that way the first day or 2 can be spent much more on cultural assimilation, getting them used to being with their peers and getting them comfortable and not feeling like an outsider and everybody's looking at them. So there's just a big gap there that exists between what is, if I asked every person, I bet everybody would say that. I'm an extrovert, but I still say I'm uncomfortable in new buildings, in new environments, in new teams, right? How am I fitting in? How am I presenting myself? What are these people thinking about me, right? But what is the first thing that I do on the very first day? I take a bunch of tests. I do a bunch of assignments, a bunch of tasks, and I spend minimal time. Or my leader just kind of hands me off to somebody else if they introduce me and they're gone. But that was the only person I had a relationship with through the interview process. So
Right.
if you happen to have an onboarding team and you can't be the leader that's there with them the whole time, make sure that your onboarding team, or at least somebody from there, is part of the interview process, is part of those conversations. So that's really, in my opinion, how that transitions happen smoothly, is that the same person that was doing the interview or somewhat involved in that is able to transition them and be part of their onboarding as well when possible.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
have a comment from Shatat, who said, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If not, my apologies. I think knowing company environment and culture is also very important for a new employee. Yes, you're right. And I will touch upon that in my presentation in a few minutes, but you're fully right. It's not only about the job and here is your colleagues, etc., but the company culture environment that is so important. That's true.
It's such a great point because, we all know of Simon Sinek, or I hope we do. He talks about salespeople. He says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Well, people don't come to work for you because of what you do. They come to work for you for why you do it. That's what ultimately motivates them. Your culture is why you do everything that you do. It's your vision, it's your behavior, it's your values. So those are spot on. That's exactly what you should be introducing them on, but that's not what's happening. That is not what's happening.
Correct.
That is all technical focused. I look at onboarding as 3 things. I look at, you have administrative onboarding, you have technical and operational onboarding, which are kind of one and the same, and you have cultural onboarding. And administrative onboarding is the one that happens the most. The technical and the one is kind of next, and the cultural is like, all right, we had a meeting, we said what our values are, good to go. You want to know what cultural onboarding should look like? You create the experience that person should recreate. I had a team one time, just a quick story, but a manager took over a bad team that were doing really bad, and he wanted to re-onboard them and show them what they needed to do for their jobs. You know what he did? Took them out to Ritz-Carlton. And he basically gave him the experience of where people don't say no. These teams were struggling with customer service, and they created that kind of environment to set the culture without doing anything technically different. This team skyrocketed to the top because they focused on the right things. So that's such a great point. Next question. So how do you, now it's more prevalent than ever because, with everything going on and with the world shifting more virtually, how do you onboard somebody virtually? If you're not going to be face to face with them, what is it that you must do to ensure that an onboarding still happens and it's a quality onboarding?
I think the level and amount of communication has to be remarkably more, because as we've observed, when you're in a virtual environment, you don't get all of the nuances So you may have to explain things more and communicate with more detail and fill in the blanks that would have otherwise been picked up in person would be, for me, that would be part of it. V?
Yes, sorry, I was welcoming one
Yeah.
of our new members. I missed the question. Can you repeat again, Anton? Sorry.
Yeah, so
Go ahead, Anton.
I was just asking, how do you onboard virtually?
Oh yes, virtually, yes. So again, my favorite, one of my favorite communication. Again, you need, especially virtually, you need to be clear and set specific appointments with your new hire, making sure, first asking him or her when he is available to talk, because again, the person may still be working, so is not available throughout the day, or maybe the person is living on the other side of the world and you need to take the time zone, the time difference into consideration. So asking the person when he or she would be available, and then make a plan as well to first have this first conversation, say, okay, I want to implement an onboarding plan with you to make sure you know the tools, your colleagues, the policies, the procedures, the culture, etc. I need 10 hours of your time. When would you be available? And then start to make a plan with that person, when the person would be available and who he or she going to talk to. Because obviously as the leader, you don't have to train that person on everything. Maybe you have your specialist who will explain the person what are the tools to use. And then maybe you'll have someone else who will explain about the culture and the organization. And then another person who will say, well, these are your main stakeholders, etc. etc. But I think really from that first meeting, setting the right expectation, asking when it's convenient for the person, so that again, they are not forced to again have a call in the middle of the day while usually they're still having a meeting with their still current company, to make sure again that both are aligned, as we said, alignment, both are aligned, both are agree with the next steps, both know what to expect when. That is so important, so that again, the person doesn't feel overwhelmed or left out, but is motivated to move forward because he or she has a plan in mind and he knows, okay, by then I finish my current job, by then I will start my new job and already have this and that knowledge, or I know I will meet this and that person then. So that's very important.
I would also add with virtual is document communication, including recording virtual meetings, because that way you can go back and review. Either one involved can review it. And then as often as possible, have an email chain so that if it comes up, we can have that communication record for two reasons. One, clarity, because if you go back and said, well, they say, well, you said this, and you go, well, if you look at this email, this is what I said. And then also it helps us to slow down and think. One thing about virtual is we cannot operate virtually at the same speed sometimes that we can in person. And so consider that the movement is real potentially different in terms of speed.
I love it, guys. And the one thing that I haven't heard us mention is the thing that I think the most toughest to do virtually is the thing that we're already bad at in person and at show care. I think that we already do bad face to face, and I think it's even harder for managers to show care that way. So if that's the case, it may need to be a random email here and there, just checking in on you, seeing how your day is going, right? Because you would do that because you would be walking by their location in the building after lunch, and you would quickly check in with them. But when we're sitting behind our computers, we bog down, we're not seeing them. So it's not triggering our brain to easily think about that. So you have to think about all those minute interactions that happen in face-to-face situations, and how can you try to replicate and mimic those virtually, whether it be an email, whether it be a gift card at the end of the week, like, hey, you really had a great week, I just wanted you to know that, here, go grab a $10 coffee from Starbucks, because that seems like how much Starbucks coffee costs. But so that's a big component. The other thing is, I would say, make sure that you check in before and after their day, if possible, with time zones permitting and stuff like that. So, set the plan for the day, just like you would if they first came in. At the end of the day, see how the day went, and see if they have any feedback, if there's any additional information they need from what was learned that day, if there's any clarity that's needed. Maybe you need to set up a different meeting for them with another person if you're not doing the onboarding yourself. But why? Because people need to feel cared for. And how do kids spell, or how do kids spell love? And which ultimately it is TIME. Adults doesn't change. TIME, time. If you want to show care, give them time. And if you can't be face to face, give them time virtually.
Yeah, brilliant.
All right, let's see. We got about 10 more minutes left of the panel, so we'll do one more. Let's talk about kind of the difference between social, cultural, technical, and administrative onboarding. When you guys hear those kind of categories, what do you think of some of these difference between social, cultural, technical, and administrative onboarding?
Well, admin onboarding, hopefully, is pretty clear cut. I mean, you got a certain set of documents and information that you have to gather and process. I would say that's pretty cut and dried. The technical depends on the team, the situation, so it's not quite as clear cut, but still should be a little more easily defined, because you're looking at the skill sets and tasks that need to be done. Can they do them or can they not? And then social and cultural, those are, as a friend of mine says, those are kind of messy. And I don't know that we can give it a checklist kind of approach. It's got to be, this is where I think the art part of leadership comes in, is understanding when have we socially and culturally onboarded someone. And again, that could, some people, you take an extrovert like you, Anton, and you bring them in, get them a little bit secure in the environment, and boom, they're off and running and good to go. But you get someone like me that's more of an introvert and socially introverted. It may take a little more time to figure out how to help me get culturally and socially assimilated, and understand what that looks like will be very different. For an extrovert, that means they're having good conversations and laughter and jokes with their teammates very regular. For someone that's an introvert, it may just mean they're comfortable enough to at least say hello every day or something. That's part of the art of leading people in the workforce environment, is to be able to understand and help them assimilate for them.
Great point. On the administrative side, I would also like to add something, and again, it's mostly for people who are moving abroad, is that often companies should also help their new hires with their administrative tasks that they need. So it may be a working permit or a visa, etc. So this can also be started when the candidate has accepted the offer and signed the contract. But also certain things can only be done when the person is actually on site. So these are things that also need to happen aside from the, let's say, the normal administrative stuff. There are some cases where, again, people coming from different countries or even different regions, they need to have certain additional papers that you can only process once they're on board. So that's one thing. And the technical, again, usually people are hired for their technical skills. And by technical skills, we don't mean only technical, but like a specific set of skills that they may have. So for that, it's more like explaining them what are the responsibilities that they will have, or what are the things they need to do on a certain frequency. So that is, I would say, the most straightforward. The social and the cultural onboarding, and you're right, Kevin, it really depends, and it needs to be customized. Everybody is different. You need to take that into consideration. The example you gave with the extrovert introvert is a great one. Another great one, again, and from my experience, having worked for more than 20 years in international organizations and dealing with people from all over the world, I know that in certain countries and certain cultures, people are more hesitant to ask questions, or more hesitant to say, I didn't understand, or can you re-explain, etc. So you also need to take that into consideration, that some people may need more time to maybe not assimilate the thing you've taught them, but just to practice it, or to feel like part of the team, and to feel that yes, they can give their opinion, yes, they can ask questions, etc., etc. So these are important criteria to think of. And as you said as well, Kevin, it's difficult to say when this is happening, because again, as I said, it may be different for people. And so that's probably the most tricky part to measure. The technical side, you can see whether someone or not has got the training in certain tools. The administrative, where when the contract is done, when you know it's done, etc., etc. But the social and cultural aspects are probably the ones that are more intangible, because of again of the differences between personalities and cultures, etc., etc.
They're more intangible and they're harder to prep for. They're harder for leaders to execute, right? And they require a lot more from the leader to be proactive with it. With administrative and technical onboarding, that can be pretty reactive. You put a new hire in a building today, and I can get them through administrative and technical onboarding because I know the job, I know all the bells and whistles. But the social and the cultural onboarding requires me to know the person, requires me to care and understand about the person. That's why so many managers and leaders fall short of this, because they don't spend that additional time, which we'll cover in great detail today. But to me,
And Anton, I just want to piggyback something V said that is so critical, is that as a leader, we got to be sure that we learn about other cultures, because the new person coming in may not be ready and comfortable to talk about their culture to the team. And the more that we can help contextualize that culture for the team, the better it is, so that, it's nothing worse than well-intended gesture on the part of a team member to welcome somebody and realize that because of cultural difference, not only didn't they welcome them, but they might have offended them. So real important that a leader be aware of those things, and be proactive in helping their team understand when you're in a multicultural environment, to really don't assume everybody else knows it. Make sure they know it.
yet another point why leadership's not for everybody. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy task. There's a lot of moving pieces that you got to control. But like I said, with me, the four to me, the first two are pretty easy, right? The administrative stuff. The thing there that I reiterate this a lot because I've seen it happen a lot. Make sure your people know all the benefits that come with their job, and they're onboarding, knowing that when the deadlines to sign up for them are, what the way to sign up for it is, what those benefits are, help them understand, and 401ks, all those kind of things. Don't assume just because you got a big 401k and you know what you're doing there, that your people will just automatically take the match. They may not even be investing in 401k. They may need additional education just in savings and 401k education just to be able to choose that benefit that they rightfully should, because if company has a match, that's free money. Then the technical stuff, that's pretty simple, right? But don't think about just exactly what they do. Think about all the things that they may interact with. They may be in contact with a customer that's not really their job, but do they know how to answer their phone properly in the way that your company answers that phone? So don't always just limit it to the skills that they may exhibit directly. There may be some indirect things that they need to be aware of as well. With cultural, you guys nailed that one pretty good. The only thing I would add, cultural, it's both our culture and their culture. Do they understand our culture well, which is our vision, our values, the way that we do things from the high level standpoint, from character standpoint, but also do we understand their culture, but allow their culture to fit in within ours. Imagine different cultures need to pray at different times. Have we created a place for them where they can go and do that and know that that is reserved for them to do when they need it, right? Or are they going to have to go to their car, feel uncomfortable, or or not even have time for that? Maybe that break is not even built in. So we need to be aware of all that stuff. And social to me is purely just with their team, social from that standpoint, from their customers sometimes too, because if you are a kind of business that interacts with your customers a lot, they need to fit in socially with your customers the same way they fit it socially with your team. So those are kind of the main four. And there's the thing is, there's not a clear cut like difference between all of them. Some may say, well, this kind of falls under technical, this kind of falls under administrative, and there's not going to be a definitive answer. You just need to take a look at all the tasks, all the different things that happen in your building, and kind of classify them in these four categories. What are things that are important socially? What are things that are important culturally? What are things that are important, technically and administratively? And then make sure you hit those, like Kevin said, so nobody's left behind. Because if you left them behind any of those steps, it's going to be an inefficiency. And that inefficiency over time is going to grow. It's going to cause that person to use more resources than they should in a day. And that's definition of not being humanly sustainable. Right. So let's see, we got one more here. And that question is, to mentor or not to mentor? What do you guys think? Should a leader, become, and it's not necessarily to mentor your people or not to mentor your people. Should you spend a lot of time with your person in the very beginning? Or should you use a team, perhaps, like somebody's mentioned, have an onboarding team? I'm on the side of you are there with them. Like I literally would put a new hire in my pocket if I could, and they would be with me all the time just to make sure that they feel good, they know everything. But there's also other side of people that say, look, you can't give up that much time, and the time that you do give will not be as good. Let the onboarding team take care of it. What do you guys say?
So for me, I would say both. You should be there for your new hire, but you should also appoint someone else. And again, that's a topic I will cover in my presentation in the next few minutes. You can have someone in your team mentor that new hire. Because again, this person, the new hire will know that he or she can ask questions to someone else, or if she has doubts or concerns or whatever, and maybe doesn't dare to bother you every 5 minutes, so he can go to that other person, and that other person as well can guide the person, tell them maybe some stuff that maybe you as a leader didn't think of or didn't have time to cover. So I think it should be both. And to your point, the point you made earlier on, Anton, you as a leader, you need to make sure you still have regular checks with your new hire to make sure, again, he or she is getting acquainted with all the new things, if he or she needs additional support. But I think having someone else as well mentor that new person is very beneficial, because at least the new hire also gets another perspective on things.
Well, and ultimately, speaking from a leader vantage point, regardless of whether someone's been assigned to a mentor or you're mentoring them, you're responsible for it. Make sure it doesn't get dropped. And I'm with Anton. I really prefer that the leader that they're going to be working with becomes their primary mentor, at least early on, because that leader is the one that's going to set the tone. They're going to know the most about it, be able to give them the best view. And so I would say, as much as possible, make that a priority. And if the leader doesn't have time for that, my question is, are their priorities out of whack?
Or it's a bad org structure, right? To where they got
Right.
too many people under one team, and one leader's having to oversee 20 people and they're spread way too thin.
Or they're not delegating.
Yep.
They're not delegating other things and empowering their team members on other things. So yeah, if a team leader doesn't have time to mentor new team members, I would worry there's a priority problem.
Mm-hmm.
We're down to about a minute or so.
Yeah, we're good. We're good here. We'll take a break until we have a 15-minute break right now?
Yes.
Yes.
15
so
minutes.
We got a 15-minute break until 50 on the hour. So we're actually going to do an 18-minute break.
Okay.
10 till is when we will resume, guys.
And welcome aboard, everyone. We've been trying to make sure we welcomed you in the chat, and but we've noticed you joining. We're so pleased to have you a part, and look forward to, by the way, having you ask questions, make comments in the chat so that we can engage those as we go along with the summit. So
you guys have heard me sing V's praises on inclusivity, and just look in the chat. Like look in the chat and see how many people she has welcomed. And Kevin's welcomed one or two, and then me is like, "Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? Hope you're good." Like I checked the box, right? This is like in life. We're showing you right now what diversity and inclusion looks like in life, specifically the inclusion part. I'm the leader that checked the box, right? I did the bare minimum. I acknowledged that everybody's here. I said, "Hey, nice to have you." Is that good enough? Maybe, not really. Kevin did a few, he's been busy, but every single person that has come in, she's acknowledged that they're here, thank them for being here. That's what inclusion looks like, guys. And I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Sorry
Well, you were for
I
your
keep putting you on the
defense.
spot.
Yeah, for your defense, you were talking, Anton, so you couldn't see everybody.
Yeah,
joining.
no. It's just how it is. I know this about you. That's why I pointed it out.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, guys.